Well, folks, it has been a long time, but we are finally back here on Believe in White Sox. It has been a near 2 month hiatus since we have last recorded, and I want to explain a little bit as to why that's the case. So, for those of you that forgot who I am, I'm Greg. I am the sometimes host of Believe in White Sox, hopefully now to be the more frequent host of Believe in White Sox. And just to give you a little bit of a background as to why we've been off for so long. First off, the White Sox had such a terrible year that after we recorded our episode on October 1st, I just wanted to purge myself of this team for quite some time. I didn't think, unlike a lot of years when you cover a baseball team and you want to examine certain parts of the organization and think about what went right, what went wrong, how you evaluate what you need to do moving forward. None of that applied to the 41 and 121 Chicago White Sox. Because quite simply, what was there to be gained from examining the worst team in the history of modern Major League Baseball? There really wasn't anything at all. There were some positive signs to be taken from a couple of players, mainly guys in the rotation like Drew Thorpe, who had flashes of brilliance, you might say, but nothing to really write home about. But I also started the pod in the middle of a time when my main job went away. So I was the research manager at Pac 12 Network for 5 years. And because of the Pac 12 going under, and I'm actually repping my Pac 12 sweater for those of you that are actually watching. And I don't know how many people actually watch the YouTubes, but needless to say, thank you for watching if you are. I was frantically trying to find a new job, and I actually did find a new job. So you might notice that the background is a lot different than our previous backgrounds when recording this show. And that is because this apartment that I am currently in is in the city of Chicago, Illinois. So I actually now live in the city in which the White Sox play. And the reason is that I took a job with Big Ten Network, same title, research manager. So congrats to me, I guess. I'm not that conceited, so I'm not going to congratulate myself on my own job. But basically, I took the job and had to move here in the span of about 3 weeks. And as soon as I got here, got thrown into the fire and basically have not had time to breathe. So college football season is my busiest time of year, usually on the professional side of things. So it just got to a point where I was not able to commit any time to doing things outside of work, which obviously not healthy. But now that things have settled down a little bit, I've actually unpacked all of my boxes that I moved. I tell you what, trying to move in the span of about 3 weeks is certainly not easy. So I don't recommend it to anybody if you don't have to do it that way. But I still need to go to the DMV and actually get a lot of that stuff handled and getting my license plate changed to Illinois and licensed to be Illinois. So with that being said, that's the reason why you haven't heard from me for a while. I didn't want to, as much as I thought it was important to probably do it, I didn't do an episode when Will Venable was hired as manager because at this point, I don't know what a manager is going to do if the roster isn't that much different. Now, I like Will Venable. He's actually from my hometown. So, fun fact, I'm from San Rafael, California. He is also from San Rafael, California. We were born in the same hospital because it says on his bio page that he was born in Green Bay. And for those of you that have actually heard of Green Bay, it's basically where the hospital is that most people that are born in central or southern Marin County in the Bay Area are born. So he and I were born in the same hospital. So I think that that's kind of fun. But Will Venable is a really smart guy. Like let's say that what we know of Will Venable, he's a guy that went to Princeton and played in the big leagues, was part of Theo Epstein's front office his final few years with the Cubs, and then gets the associate manager job with the Texas Rangers and Bruce Bochy starting with the 2023 season. So he was on Bochy's coaching staff each of the last couple of years. And one of the reasons why I feel like you're going to have a successful, or at least hopefully successful manager, is that he understands how to get the most out of his guys, because that's what Bruce Bochy has done. I mean, he has been Alex Cora's bench coach. He has been the associate manager under Bochy. And the reason why I am encouraged by the hire in terms of the long term scope, now, you have to give him carte blanche over everything that he wants to do. Now, I don't trust the White Sox are going to do that, but you have to give him what he needs in order to be successful. And that is obviously going to be a more successful roster, a higher focus on actual analytics. We know what the White Sox ended up doing analytically, per the piece from Brick Garoli and Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic that was written a couple of months ago, that basically eviscerated all of the White Sox analytical systems. But I think that when you talk about what the White Sox are going to be under Will Venable, it's going to be a blend of old school and new school, because he is the son of former Major League veteran Max Venable, who played for the Giants for many years. He worked with Theo Epstein, the analytical new school. And I really don't think we can necessarily say that he is analytically new school at this point. I mean, he came in the early era of the analytical revolution, but I don't think that we would necessarily call Theo Epstein to be like the forefront of modern analytics at this point. And old school, because he worked under Alex Cora, he worked under Bruce Bochy. And if he had stayed in Texas, I bet he would have been the Rangers' next manager when Bochy actually retired. But this was an opportunity for them to do it now. And I think that it was good that this managerial choice wasn't a wackadoodle insular hire like AJ Pierzynski. Not that AJ Pierzynski couldn't have been a good manager, but I don't think that AJ Pierzynski is the right guy to lead a team that is basically starting from nothing effectively. And that's where I segue into before that, before we get to the Garrett Crochet trade, I do want to talk about the fact that the White Sox didn't actually change much of their coaching staff. Ethan Katz is back as pitching coach. He's now survived 3 different managers. So he was brought in under La Russa and stayed through Grifol. Obviously stayed on when Grady Sizemore was the interim manager, but he's back. Marcus Timms is going to be back as hitting coach again, which I think is a little bit discouraging given how bad the White Sox were in terms of hitting last year. I mean, you look at, there are really not a lot of guys that are brand new to the organization. Walker McKinven, the bench coach, he was on the Brewers staff the last 5 years. That's basically like the only new guy. I mean, Jershel and Bourgeois, who are the first base and third base coach respectively, like they've already been in the organization. Ethan Katz has been in the organization. Same with Drew Butera. Um, the more things change, it seems like the more they stay the same. So I wish that Will Venable would have been able to have more of a control over who he brought in as his coaching staff. But the White Sox did have some exodus from their big league coaching staff when they did fire Grifol in August. So that's one thing to be certain. But my point was going to be, you can't expect too much of Will Venable based on the roster. And right now, at least up until yesterday, your only additions were Austin Slater, who for the entirety of his career has been a platoon outfielder, and Mike Tauchman, who Cubs fans know who Mike Tauchman is. Cubs fans know what Mike Tauchman is. And Mike Tauchman is exactly what he is, a flawed player that you can sign for around $2 million and pretty much get away with it. He is effectively Nicky Delmonico 5 years in the future. That's what he is at this point. He is this era of White Sox rebuilds Nicky Delmonico. And that's obviously not encouraging for a number of reasons, but I think that he is who he is. And again, it's 2 moves that are part of an outfield that is Andrew Benintendi, Luis Robert, question marks, and these guys fill roster holes. They're not exactly going to be the guys that you talk about as foundational pieces of the organization moving forward. Like they are effectively what the Paul DeYoungs of the world were last year. Like they are the guys that are going to fill roster holes. And then we get to yesterday. Garrett Crochet, who we have stumped for on this show all the way back in September and August and July and every episode that we recorded since I took over as the host of this show, we have pounded the table to keep Crochet in a White Sox uniform and to extend his contract, because he's a controllable arm that can be a part of the next great White Sox team. If that is a phrase that even makes sense, the next great White Sox team. I don't even know when we're going to have the next good White Sox team. Garrett Crochet gets dealt to the Boston Red Sox. If you want to throw it back to another version of the previous rebuild, effectively like the Chris Sale deal going to the Red Sox, you get Kyle Teal, Braden Montgomery, Chase Maedroth, and Wickelman Gonzalez in exchange for Garrett Crochet from the Red Sox. Now, you had 4 of the top 15 prospects in the Boston system, and Teal and Montgomery are 2 top 100 prospects in baseball per MLB Pipeline. Here is where I stand on this. Chris Getz probably could have gotten a lot more, and he could have gotten major league ready guys for Garrett Crochet if he wanted. The thing that is a little bit disturbing to me about where the White Sox are at this point is, how many catchers do you have before you have a franchise catcher? When they traded away Lucas Giolito in 2023, you got a guy back in Corey Lee who you thought, okay, it wasn't Corey. Who was Corey Lee traded for again? It was Kendall Graveman. All right, sorry. My apologies. Corey Lee was picked up thinking that he could be the next franchise catcher. It was Edgar Cuero that was picked up from the Angels that then the White Sox figured, okay, he could be the next franchise catcher. And now you pick up Kyle Teal, who is another first-round catcher, and you think maybe he could be the next franchise catcher. So I don't know where the White Sox are going to stand in terms of who is going to be this team's next franchise catcher. All I can say is, from what the numbers have borne out over what Kyle Teal is, he's proven he can do it at the Double-A level. In 84 games at Double-A Portland last year, hit .299 with a .390 on base, slugged at .462, 11 bombs, 60 runs batted in. He's only 22 years old. So the thing about Kyle Teal is he got AAA experience at just 22 years of age. And he'll turn 23 in February. So probably will not start on the Major League roster. But I think that somebody that you see a high upside with. He was only drafted in 2023. Played at Virginia. His junior year at Virginia in 2023 hit .407 with 13 homers and 69 runs driven in. So he's a really solid piece and somebody that it lists on his Baseball Reference page that he can play the corner outfield. So if he could play the corner outfield, I think that would be a really solid pickup. I'm saying this from the perspective of, is it sad that Garrett Crochet is gone? Yes, it's extremely sad that he's gone. But I want to examine what should be the highest upside player that you got back for him. The disturbing thing that, for me as a White Sox fan, is that Chris Getz is 2 big league trades. You've gotten back 1 major league player, 1 guy with major league experience in Miguel Vargas. And Miguel Vargas, for his White Sox tenure, I hope that I get to see the same guy that I covered back in the minors. But Miguel Vargas looked completely overmatched when given the chance to play every day with the White Sox. So that is unfortunate to say the least. Braden Montgomery is somebody that is really far away. Now, I got to see Braden Montgomery when he was at Stanford. He's a stud. His first year at Stanford in 2022, he hit 18 homers, drove in 57 runs, hit 294. 2023 at Stanford, he was even better. 336, 17 homers, 61 runs batted in. He's also a two-way guy. Now, he pitched in 15 games his freshman year, only pitched in 10 games his sophomore year. He transferred to Texas A&M and stopped pitching. And I think that was probably for the best. So he's going to probably be a guy that could play center field, can play right field. Effectively, when he makes it to the big leagues, he will, and he's a switch hitter, he will end up as the replacement for Luis Robert when Luis Robert is eventually traded. And let's just call a spade a spade. If you traded Garrett Crochet, at some point you're going to trade Luis Robert. And I think that given a lot of the effort that you've seen out of Luis Robert in the last year, probably best that he does move on. Now, Will Venable was a major league outfielder. Maybe there's a way that he can connect with Luis Robert in order to get the most out of him. Now, if Luis Robert starts to perform well, at this point in the offseason, does not seem like the White Sox are going to trade Luis Robert. Braden Montgomery suffered a catastrophic leg injury during the College World Series last year. And the Red Sox took him in the first round anyway, and he did not play any minor league ball in 2024. So his first professional experience will be as a member of the Chicago White Sox. And I would say as a 3-year college guy and a 3-year college guy that had a lot of success. Now, I didn't get into his stats from last year. When he transferred to Texas A&M, he made a huge jump. Hit 322 with a 454 on base, slugged at 733, 27 homers and 85 runs driven in 61 games. Absolute stud. On a team that, granted, he didn't play in the series finale, in the College World Series final, because of his injury, but an absolute stud. I would hope that given the fact that he played in the College World Series with Stanford, College World Series with Texas A&M, that this is somebody at age 21, he'll be 22 in April, that can find a way to get himself major league ready in the next couple of years. And there's no reason for the White Sox to rush his development. We know how the White Sox have rushed other guys' development, so we'll see how the injury progression of Braden Montgomery allows him to develop in the 2025 season. I would suspect that he is going to be somebody that they'll start at high A and see how he goes throughout the first couple months of the season, and then maybe give him a jump to Double A Birmingham. Chase Meidroth is a 23-year-old. He'll be 24 in July. Fourth rounder by the Red Sox out of the University of San Diego. I actually called a couple of his college games. He has made a really nice progression through the Red Sox system. And maybe in terms of guys that are major league ready, he's probably the most major league ready of them. Last year, he played 122 games in AAA Worcester, 293, 7 homers, 57 runs batted in. He's a second baseman. I think this is a guy that you look at in terms of, is he a high contact guy? Yes. He struck out just 71 times in 437 at bats. And if I go to my handy dandy calculator, I'm going to think that that is probably a strikeout rate of less than 20%. Let's see if my math is actually good here. Let's see if I guesstimate my math right. 16%. All right, that's pretty darn good. 16% is a really solid strikeout rate. So I'm very encouraged by what this guy is. And I think that given the relative obscurity of the White Sox infield at this point, they're going to give Brian Ramos every opportunity to be this team's everyday third baseman. They're going to give Miguel Vargas an opportunity to play in the outfield every day, but he'll probably have a chance to play third. The Colson Montgomery question is interesting. The Brooks Baldwin question, is he their everyday second baseman? Is he somebody that platoons because he's a switch hitter? Um, there's still the question of what you do with Lenine Sosa. Andrew Vaughn is still your everyday first baseman, so he's probably and now maybe there's a situation where Andrew Vaughn becomes your everyday designated hitter and Miguel Vargas moves over to first, and then you can have Ramos be your everyday guy at third, be confident in a Kyle Teal in the corner outfield. I don't know how this roster is going to end up coming together. You're still stuck with Andrew Benintendi. Now that I think about it, you probably want to have Benintendi be your designated hitter just because of the fact that he's one of the worst defensive outfielders in Major League Baseball. And you're stuck with him for another 3 years, including this year. If they could somehow find a way to deal Andrew Benintendi, that would be great, but that would mean that the White Sox are going to eat salary, and the White Sox don't eat salary. And then there is Riquelme Gonzalez, who is a 22-year-old Venezuelan. He made it up to Double A Portland last year. 4-3 record with a 4.73 ERA in 19 starts, went 83 and 2/3 innings. Had some walk issues. 46 walks, struck out 92 in High A Greenville in 2023 before he got promoted to Double A Portland. He had 105 strikeouts in 63 innings. So this is somebody that's got really good stuff. He's only 22 years old, so a lot of upside there, but somebody that is at least a year and a half away from being major league ready. So that's your return for Garrett Crochet. I really would have wanted something a little bit more significant from the major league player side of things. But unfortunately, that's where we're at in terms of what the White Sox are, what the White Sox are effectively going to be under Chris Getz. Is they're not, and Getz is going to be the executive for the time being. They're not maximizing the returns on the assets that they have. Now, the better move would have just have been to not trade Crochet at all. But I think that comparative to what they did post 2016, when they traded away Adam Eaton to the Nationals, when they traded away Chris Sale to the Red Sox, there's an acknowledgement from this organization, a silent acknowledgement that, and it's unfortunate because the guy that was overseeing player development is now your general manager, that this team does not develop its own draft picks well. They just don't. The White Sox do not develop their own draft picks well. And to me, that is really the biggest indictment of what this team has been really since, it feels like since forever. Like, this is not a team that since the turn of the century even has been that good at developing its own prospects. Now, people are excited about the Noah Schultzes and the Hagen Smiths of the world. And already, like, this is the thing to me that is a little bit, I think, tells you all you need to know. The top 5 prospects in the White Sox system are either first rounders that they've picked or guys that they've acquired. Actually, top 6. Per MLB Pipeline, their number 1 prospect right now is Noah Schultz. He was a first rounder. Kyle Teal's their second, trade. Hagen Smith, first rounder. Colson Montgomery, first rounder. Braden Montgomery, trade. Edgar Cuero, trade. So, to me, the inability of the White Sox to develop their own prospects, Jacob Gonzalez, who was their first rounder in 2023, he's only the 15th ranked prospect. Brian Ramos is the 16th ranked prospect. Chase Meidroth, a second baseman, is already their 13th ranked prospect. There's a lot of issues in terms of White Sox player development. Now, Crochet is a success story because he was their first rounder in 2020, but he's already gone. And I do have a few things that I do want to say about what Garrett Crochet represents, because he unfortunately is somebody that I don't think we're going to see again in a White Sox uniform for quite some time. To me, there's a sadness over the departure of Garrett Crochet in terms of what he could have been for the long-term future of the White Sox. I mean, this was a guy that was a top 10 pick coming out of the University of Tennessee, made his big league debut the same year he was drafted, very much like Chris Sale, and was a stud coming out of the bullpen in the 5 appearances he made in the regular season, in the COVID-shortened season, and then was a big part of the playoff roster that unfortunately was not able to get the job done against the Oakland A's. But in that game 3, I remember he was the most dominant of anybody that actually pitched in that game, and showed a lot of promise out of the bullpen in 2021. Obviously, him having to undergo Tommy John surgery was a big part of why he was not as memorable in terms of the length of his White Sox tenure that he was, but he had a great year out of the bullpen in 2021. And, he had 65 strikeouts in 54 innings, and then finally getting a chance to come back in 2023 and getting his sea legs back under him out of the bullpen. And then last year was on pace to have one of the best seasons in terms of strikeout numbers in quite some time, and still struck out 209 guys in 146 innings. But White Sox started to really cap his workload, and unfortunately was just somebody that didn't fit into what the White Sox wanted to pay long term for a starting pitcher, because the Reinsdorf organizations don't pay long term for any pitchers. Um, Obviously, it doesn't apply to the Chicago Bulls because they're a basketball team, but you know what I mean in terms of the the philosophy from what the White Sox are organizationally. And I feel like somebody like a Garrett Crochet will get a long-term contract in Boston. I think that maybe there was a hesitancy about handing out a long-term contract to somebody that could probably get more money on the open market. I think Crochet knew that based on how well he pitched in the first half of 2024, that he could get a lot more money on the open market. I would not be surprised if the Red Sox extend him at some point before the 2025 season begins, even though they don't have to because they have 2 more years of team control with him. So maybe it was the White Sox acknowledgement that they weren't going to be competitive and be able to keep Garrett Crochet going into their competitive window. I've said before that the first year that this team should be competitive to make the playoffs again will be 2027. Now, I hope it's earlier than that. 2025 is unfortunately setting up to be similar to 2024. But I think there's a difference. I think that entering 2024, there was a belief that this team could be better than the 61-101 team that they were in 2023. Now, unfortunately, it got worse than that. So much worse that I don't think that they can go further down. That being said, I still, if I'm examining what this team is on December 12th, I still think this is a team that probably will lose in the range of 95 to 100 games. But it's all about what pieces are you developing at the major league level and at the minor league level that are going to be long-term organizational pieces. And I think that the sadness of what Garrett Crochet became is somebody that is still young, but not young enough to keep around through years where you're not winning. And that's the unfortunate nature of starting pitcher contracts. Starting pitchers are by nature guys that go once every 5 days. And you've seen, especially now with Max Fried getting the contract that he did from the New York Yankees, 8 years, $218 million for a guy that pitches once every 5 days. Garrett Cole, his initial 9-year contract, $324 million. So you have effectively, if you're the Yankees, you've put in $550 million into guys that are going to pitch in 40% of your games. I think Garrett Crochet, maybe not now, but if he pitches well in 2025, he's going to get a significant payday because he's only 25 years old. Max Fried, I believe, is 28 or 29, which is a significant age to give a guy. He's 30. Max Fried is 30. You just gave, if you're the Yankees, you just gave a 30-year-old an 8-year contract. How is that going to pan out going into his mid-30s? Probably not well. And not to mention that Max Fried was a high school guy. Max Fried was drafted in 2012 by the Padres. He didn't make his major league debut until 2017. It's a guy who's got a lot of miles on him. So, philosophically, as sad as it is to see somebody as talented as Garrett Crochet go out the door and maybe you not have gotten as much for him as you would have wanted, but I think the White Sox also had to deal him to an organization that was going to be willing to extend him. Because I don't think that his value would have been as high to an organization that would take him as, we'll have him for his 2 years of team control and then he's going to walk out the door. I don't think certain organizations are going to be willing to part with somebody like that or rather part with prospects or part with major league ready players for somebody that's not going to be in their organization after 2026. So it's an interesting cat and mouse game. Needless to say, I think the return on Garrett Crochet, just in terms of the talent you got back, significantly better than what you got for the Michael Kopech and Eric Fetty deals. We'll see if the White Sox make any moves like signing the Eric Fetty type players. I don't think that that's going to be the case. This rotation is going to be an absolute mystery because right now you've got Drew Thorpe, Jonathan Cannon. Assume that you're going to put Davis Martin back out there for, the start of the regular season. Maybe put Jesse Schultens back in as a starter at certain points in time. But this is a wide open rotation. And you're going to see some guys in there that I would not be surprised if you'd be like, who's this guy? I also think that a lot of White Sox fans are waiting for, and I think at this point, when you talk about Noah Schultz and him being the White Sox top prospect, I think that you have to, organizationally, if you're the White Sox, you have to understand where you are at this point. Noah Schultz was drafted in 2022. You do not have to start his service time clock for quite some time. He has not pitched at the AAA level yet. He was great at AA last year. 73 strikeouts in 61 innings. Only 17 walks. His whip was at 1.01. He has yet to pitch at AAA. So to me, when you see a guy like that and how good he could be, and the fact he's a Chicago kid, I think that you keep him in the minors as long as humanly possible until he is legitimately ready to go. And it might mean taking it on the chin. But I would love to see a world. And this is not me saying that I hope the White Sox completely stink in 2025 because I want them to be a solid team. They're not going to be a solid team. And what is your definition of solid? What is solid for a team that lost 121 games last year? Honestly, I would say losing fewer than 100. If they could find a way to go 72 and 90, I would consider that an absolute win. That's at least signs of progress. But knowing how the White Sox operate in terms of long term contracts, I would not want to start the service time clocks of guys like Noah Schultz for another year. Hagen Smith, on the other hand, he might be ready to go at some point in the 2025 season. We've talked about this. So maybe he's up at some point, and then maybe if Noah Schultz is proving at the AAA level that he is ready to be a major league pitcher, you get him in the big leagues and you let him swim. But that's a conversation I think that we'll have more come when spring training comes, and we'll figure out exactly what the White Sox do from there. But it has been great to be back with you. Hit like, subscribe on my YouTube page, subscribe to the podcast. We will try and be more frequent with what we do recording wise and try and figure out a content plan moving into the winter months as it is about 10 degrees outside right now. We will hopefully have a little bit more warmth coming to the Chicago area, but great to be back with you. Unfortunate that it comes under the guise of Garrett Crochet being dealt, but I would not be surprised if more guys get dealt. One thing I do actually want to touch on before we say goodbye, Shane Smith was taken by the White Sox in the Rule 5 portion or rather in the Major League portion of the Rule 5 draft. He is a Brewers organizational guy, somebody that I don't really know a ton about, but had a solid year last year, split between AAA Nashville and AA Biloxi overall last year in 16 starts, 32 appearances, 6-3 with a 3.05 ERA, 113 strikeouts in 94 innings across the two levels. So Shane Smith might end up being a guy that gets a significant amount of starts for this White Sox organization next year. So we'll see where he fits in the grand scheme of things, but maybe he's somebody that gives you hope. But as a Rule 5 guy, he's got to be on the Major League roster, so I would not expect him to be a starter this year. Somebody that, we'll see where he fits in organizationally, but he's 24 years old, so he's on a little bit of the older side at this point. So probably expect to see him in the bullpen. But if nothing else, at least it's a new guy. Yay. That's it. That's all for this edition of Believe in White Sox. We will talk to you sooner than later.